Revenge with Karen.
The moment Darren said, "Let's pivot to a value-based synergy here," I swear I felt a blood vessel pop behind my eye. It wasn't just the phrase, though if bullshit could be weaponized, that one would be nuclear. It was the fact he was saying it to the VP of procurement from our longest-standing client. A woman who'd built her empire off sniffing out corporate jargon and gutting it like a trout. She blinked once, paused, and said, "What exactly does that mean, Aaron?" And like a deer sprinting toward a bear trap, he kept talking. 15 minutes later, after blaming procurement for slowing things down, misquoting our renewal terms, and offering a discount we hadn't approved, Darren signed off with a thumbs-up emoji and called it a win. He spun his chair toward me and said, handled with the smugness of a guy who just burned down a house and thought the embers looked romantic. And then he left. He just walked out. No follow-up, no email, no notes. Just vanished into the executive lounge like a kid who microwaved a fork and thinks it's someone else's problem now. I spent the next 4 hours on cleanup duty, rebuilding trust, clarifying pricing, and doing what I always did, fixing what Darren broke. I called the client, walked them through the actual terms, acknowledged the confusion without throwing him under the bus, and got things back on track. 8:03 p.m., after I'd sent the last follow-up and finally shut my laptop, I checked my phone. There was an email from the client's VP herself. Subject line, "Thank you." Inside, just one line, "Appreciate you, Karen. You're the reason we're staying." And yeah, I read it 3 times. That's the thing. You keep your head down, you do the work, and every once in a while, someone actually sees it. Doesn't change your title, doesn't change your pay. It keeps you going. Kind of like coffee with too much creamer. Not ideal, but it'll get you through another Monday. Hey, by the way, if you're already this deep into the story, and if you've ever worked with a Darren of your own, hit that like button and subscribe. Seriously, 95% of folks just listen without subscribing, but it really helps the team keep bringing you stories like this. So if you're feeling generous, smash that little bell too. Appreciate the hell out of you. Anyway, the next morning, I forwarded that thank you email to my boss, not Darren's dad, the actual person I reported to. Just so someone in leadership would see that I hadn't been asleep at the wheel while Prince Entitled was playing pretend CEO. No reply. Typical. That's the rule here. You only hear from management when something's wrong. And sure enough, something was. At 11:17 a.m., I got a Slack from Darren. Just a waving emoji and "Can you pop into Dad's office?" Like we were meeting for a backyard cookout, and not what I already knew was a fresh dump truck of office drama headed straight for me. I took a deep breath, grabbed my notepad, and walked in. The CFO was sitting behind his desk like he'd just been personally insulted by the concept of boundaries. Darren was slouched in the corner chair, doing his best wounded baby bird face. "Karen," the CFO said, not looking up, "we need to talk about how you handled the follow-up call." I didn't blink. Handled it by ensuring we didn't lose a $9 million renewal. He finally looked at me. "You embarrassed my son in front of a major client." That's when I realized what this really was. Not a performance conversation. Not a strategy review. This was Daddy doing damage control for baby boy's ego. "You undermined his authority," he continued. "Now there's chatter about who's really leading the account." I almost laughed, because chatter was code for the client trusts you more than him, and we can't have that. "So here's what's going to happen," he said, steepling his fingers like a cartoon villain. "At the all hands on Friday, you're going to make a public statement. You're going to apologize to Darren for overstepping." Darren looked up like a puppy waiting for a treat. "It doesn't have to be a big deal," he added. "Just own that you were wrong to speak out of turn." And here's the thing, I could have fought it. I could have explained the situation, defended my professionalism, gone toe-to-toe with HR and whoever else they dragged into this clown circus. But I didn't. I just nodded one word, "Okay." Then I stood up. "Anything else?" The CFO blinked. "No, that'll be all." I walked out, calm, polite, smiling even. Because while they were playing checkers with nepotism and ego, I'd already moved my queen into position 6 months ago. I was halfway through drafting a Q3 rollout plan when HR knocked on my office door like they were about to serve a damn warrant. And not the good kind, no free cake, or you've been randomly selected for a gift card email. No, this was the kind of knock that smells like lavender lotion, compliance binders, and thinly veiled threats. Behind them stood the CFO. His face was flushed. At specific betrayed men in midlife crises get when they think respect means never make my kid look stupid. Darren, shockingly, wasn't there. Probably nursing his bruised ego in the nap pod, or whatever safe space they'd padded for him in that glass fishbowl office. I motioned for them to sit. They didn't. The CFO didn't bother with a greeting, just slammed a printed copy of the client's email on my desk like it was Exhibit A in a murder trial. "You think this is appropriate?" he barked. I glanced at it, already knowing what it was. That thank you from the client praising my follow-up, the one where she said I'd restored clarity and reinstated trust. No mention of Darren. Hell, it read like a love letter to competence. "Appropriate?" I said. "I didn't write it." "You know what I mean," he snapped. "You deliberately undermined my son." HR lady shifted in her sensible flats, trying to look invisible. "I clarified factual information," I said calmly. After Darren misquoted the discount terms and blamed procurement. "That's not undermining. That's correcting the record before a $9 million deal fell through." He didn't like that. His face went from betrayed to overcooked shrimp. "Darren feels humiliated," he said through gritted teeth. "He says your tone was condescending, that you made him look incompetent." I didn't say it. I wanted to. But I didn't. I didn't say he didn't need my help with that. Because I've learned when a man's pride is in free fall, you either let it crash or get blamed for gravity. Instead, I raised an eyebrow. "So you brought HR to address your son's feelings?" That got a twitch. A full facial flinch. "We're requesting, no, we're requiring." HR jumped in, too eager, like she'd practiced the line in the mirror that morning, "that you issue a public apology during Friday's all hands. We'll provide language if needed." I stared at her like she'd grown a third arm. "You want me to apologize to Darren for not letting him sabotage a flagship account?" HR glanced nervously at the CFO. He doubled down. "This isn't about sabotage. This is about teamwork, respect, chain of command." Right, because nothing says teamwork like forcing the only woman in leadership to grovel in front of the whole company so little Lord Fauntleroy can stop crying in the bathroom. I leaned back in my chair, took a long breath, felt the anger burn through me like a slow whiskey shot. Then I smiled, that calm, eerie smile you wear when you've already checked out and they just don't know it yet. "Okay," I said, one word, crisp, hollow, surgical. HR blinked. CFO looked satisfied. Like he'd just won a pissing contest he entered unopposed. "Good," he said. "We'll add you to the agenda." As they left, I didn't move, didn't exhale, just stared at the door until it shut. Then slowly, I turned to my second monitor and opened a folder I hadn't touched in months. It was titled Continuity Agreement Client X. Inside were 6 subfolders. One was labeled Contract Clauses Executed, another named Executive Addendum. See, what Darren and his daddy never bothered to notice, because they were too busy comparing ego sizes, was that 6 months ago, during a quiet renegotiation of our multi-year deal with that client, I'd added something. A clause. Simple, clean, boring on the surface. It designated me, Karen James, as the named executive for continuity purposes, which meant, per the client's internal policy, a major change in leadership required my sign-off. Not Darren's, not the CFO's. Mine. I clicked on the PDF. Read it again just to make sure. Signature timestamped. Legal countersigned. Client's legal rep CC'd. All in black and white. That smile came back. This time it reached my eyes. Because they wanted a public apology? Fine. They'd get a public vacancy. I didn't cry on the drive home. I didn't scream into the steering wheel or throw a wine glass against the wall like some budget rom-com. I stopped by the Thai place with the sticky floors and got my usual pad ki mao, extra chili, because spite tastes better with a kick, and sat at my kitchen table under the flickering LED light I've been meaning to replace since last Thanksgiving. And then I opened my laptop. No Netflix. No doom scrolling. Just a folder I'd buried months ago, tucked between quarterly sales decks and draft performance reviews no one ever reads. It was labeled something harmless, Q2CX Addenda, because I knew better than to advertise landmines. Inside it, the clause. 6 months earlier, during what Darren called a routine renewal, I'd quietly worked with legal and our client's contract manager to tweak a few terms. Most of it was administrative fluff, timeline extensions, dispute resolution window tweaks, yada yada. But on page 9, in the dead center of section 4.2, sat the gem: all active service continuity shall be contingent upon oversight by the named executive signatory. Any change to said signatory requires client notification and written reauthorization. And directly below, my name, in ink, signed, dated, approved, countersigned by our legal counsel. Client signature dated 2 hours later. Timestamps don't lie. At the time, it had felt like a footnote. Insurance against exactly the kind of internal circus Darren had now unleashed. Not a power move, just self-preservation. But tonight, it wasn't a clause. It was the floorboard creak in the horror movie. The one no one hears until it's too late. I reread it, twice. Eyes scanning every word like they might vanish if I blinked too long. Then I opened Outlook. New message. Subject line, continuity clause, client X. Legal at our company com, CC. My personal email, because I'm not stupid, attachment. Clause 4.2 signed PDF, no drama. No expletives. Just the body text. Per the agreement dated 6 months ago, I remain the named executive tied to client X's long-term continuity. Any alteration to this arrangement may trigger Section 6.1 A regarding account review and termination rights. Please advise on protocol following voluntary separation. Then I opened a new Word doc, started typing my resignation letter. 2 paragraphs, direct, no emotion, just a timestamp and a signature. I didn't print it, I wanted it digital, imprinted, stored, undeniable, and I attached it to the same email, click send. It left my outbox at 10:41 p.m. I stared at the screen for a moment longer, then closed the laptop, pushed my dinner aside, and poured myself a glass of bourbon that was mostly regret and a little maple oak. Let them think they won. Let them high-five over putting the woman in her place. Let Darren giggle into his kombucha about how I finally learned respect. Because while they were out there oiling each other's egos, I just pulled the linchpin out from under a $63 million account and set it gently on their desk. Not to explode, not to scream, just to exist. Quiet little claws, waiting, watching. Gravity always does its job. You don't have to push, you just have to let go. The all-hands meeting was held in the big conference room, 3rd floor, 2 walls of glass, and one sad ficus plant that had been dying since 2019, but somehow clung to life, just like my patience. They'd scheduled it under the innocuous title, Quarterly Alignment and Culture Refresh, meeting names so vague it could mean anything from free cupcakes to a mass layoff. But today, it was theater. And the CFO had cast himself as the lead. I walked in 5 minutes early, not because I cared, but because if you're going to be publicly humiliated, you may as well sit near the exit. I took a chair by the window, hands folded, eyes calm, while the rest of the team filtered in with their laptops and reusable water bottles, blissfully unaware their train was about to hit the station. Darren sat near the front, new haircut, smug little polo shirt with a logo so tight it looked vacuum-sealed onto his torso. He was whispering with 2 other junior execs who'd hitched their wagons to his rising daddy star. Every so often, one of them would look at me and snicker like middle school boys who just found a playboy in the woods. At 10:02 a.m., the CFO strutted in. No greeting, no agenda. Just clapped his hands like a substitute teacher and launched into a vague monologue about respect, cross-functional synergy, and his words, the dangers of overstepping lanes. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. Then he shifted gears. We've had a recent incident involving a key client interaction. It's been addressed internally, but for transparency and accountability, God, I hate corporate speak. I want to formally announce a change in leadership regarding client X. I didn't blink. He turned toward me. Effective immediately, he said, Karen James is being removed from the account. Darren will assume full leadership moving forward. A pause, like he expected applause. The room didn't react, just a low murmur of chair adjustments and one cough from the back. I felt 30 pairs of eyes flick to me, waiting, watching, some with sympathy, some with curiosity, 1 or 2 with barely disguised glee. But I didn't flinch. I stood up slowly, smoothed my blazer, walked to the center of the room, calm as a sunrise. Understood, I said. Thank you for the update. And I smiled, not the polite office smile, not the I'm okay smile. The smile of a woman who already filed the paperwork, packed the box, and lit the fuse. There was a beat of confusion, like the moment in a movie when the villain realizes the hero isn't panicking. They finally ask, "What do you know that I don't?" But the CFO didn't have the emotional intelligence to catch it. He nodded, like he'd finally broken the wild mare. Darren, meanwhile, leaned back in his chair with the expression of someone who thinks winning an unearned promotion is the same as earning respect. You'll assist with the transition over the next week, the CFO added. I nodded, of course. Another lie, sweetly wrapped. Someone in marketing, Jen, I think, raised her hand and asked a question about next quarter's campaign overlap. The meeting sputtered forward. The tension broke like a snapped rubber band. Everyone went back to pretending it was just another Thursday. But the seed had been planted. My silence was a question mark that no one could answer. Why didn't she argue? Why didn't she explain? Why didn't she fight? Darren looked victorious, like a kid who just won a rigged game of Monopoly, even winked at me as I returned to my seat. I tilted my head, smiled again. Because, honey, you didn't just remove me from the project. You removed the only person keeping the client in the building. And now, well, we wait. The office opened at 8:30. By 8:32, the CFO was already making rounds like a rooster in a tailored suit, chest puffed, voice just loud enough to carry over the click-clack of keyboards. Dropped little breadcrumbs to whoever would listen. Karen finally saw the writing on the wall. It's about time she learned some humility. Darren's really stepping into his own. That kind of chest-thumping nonsense. And sure enough, by 8:45, my absence was the main attraction. I wasn't at my desk. My chair was pushed in. The dual monitors gone. The cactus I'd kept alive through 3 reorganizations and a breakroom flood, missing. In my place, front and center on the desk, my security badge, office key, and a sealed envelope. No dramatic music, no tearful farewell, just absence. Just a vacuum they couldn't explain. Darren strolled in 15 minutes late with an iced oat milk something, saw the clean desk, and stopped mid-sip. He looked around like he'd forgotten what day it was. People were watching him now, subtle but sharp. A few whispered. One intern snapped a photo. By 9:11 a.m., caved and texted me. Ready to apologize now? No punctuation. Just that punchable smugness condensed into 6 words. I didn't answer. I was 3 miles away, sitting in the corner booth at a diner that hadn't changed since 1974. Red vinyl seats, cracked linoleum, waitresses who remembered your order if you tipped well. My laptop was open, coffee refilled twice. The window in front of me faced the parking lot where I once taught myself how to parallel park between 2 shopping carts. Across the screen glowed one tab, Outlook. In my sent folder was last night's email to legal. Time-stamped. Signed. Attached with the contract clause. A digital landmine waiting for someone in suede loafers to step on it. I hadn't slept much, but not out of stress. Just adrenaline. It's a weird kind of peace when you know the storm is already rolling in, and all you have to do is sip your coffee and wait for the thunder. Back at the office, the CFO took my envelope into his office and emerged 10 minutes later with a face like he'd just tasted spoiled milk, but didn't want to admit it in public. He didn't say anything about the resignation, not yet. He just told HR to process it quietly. He told the rest of the execs that Karen made her choice, and we're moving forward without drama. It was the corporate equivalent of spitting on my grave before realizing you're standing on a trapdoor. By noon, Darren had locked himself in the glass-walled conference room with his laptop, trying to piece together the pieces of a puzzle he never knew existed. He had the client deck open, some Slack messages pulled up, 3 different browser tabs open to Google. What is a continuity clause? Named executive legal meaning and Karen James contract. The answers weren't on the internet. They were sitting in legal's inbox. That's the thing about a well-placed clause. It doesn't scream. It doesn't announce itself. It just waits. Waits for the moment someone pulls the wrong thread. I got another text at 2:14 p.m., this time from Jen in marketing. Are you okay? Char just sent out a transition announcement. Darren's acting weird. Did you quit? I replied simply, all is well. Just stepping back, not untrue. Just incomplete. Because what no one in that office realized, not Darren, not his dad, not the paralegal who'd spent most of last year trying to sleep with the CTO, was that by removing me from the account, they'd violated the one clause in our client agreement that made continuation conditional. No authorized executive equals no service continuity. No continuity equals client can legally walk without penalty. $63 million in revenue, suddenly dangling by a thread. And the only person who could tie it back together was now sipping diner coffee and watching a man with 3 Bluetooth earpieces scream into his windshield about Q4 losses and who signed what. I finished my eggs, refilled my coffee, and smiled. 9:07 the next morning, an email hit the ops inbox with a subject line that should have rung every alarm in the building. New point of contact. It came from the client's procurement lead, Monica Lynn, a woman so exacting she once rejected a delivery because the UPS guy looked sweaty. She didn't do small talk. She didn't tolerate mistakes. And she definitely didn't send emails just to make conversation. Message was short. Noticed Karen is no longer on the account. Please confirm who our new continuity contact is for this renewal cycle. Need it for internal compliance. That was it. No hope you're well, no emoji, not even a damn signature line. Just a single fuse already burning. By 9:22, someone in operations, Steve, bless his clueless heart, replied confidently, "Hi, Monica. Thanks for checking in. Darren will now be overseeing the account and handling all continuity matters. He's looped in here, he wasn't. But Steve CC'd him 5 minutes later. Then came Monica's reply. At 9:38, that won't work. Per our agreement, continuity must be handled by the named executive signatory. Darren is not listed in the clause. Please advise. 4 sentences. But the oxygen in the building practically thinned out. At 9:45, Steve pinged legal on Slack. Hey, quick query. Continuity clause for client X, does it have to be Karen? No reply. At 9:51, he walked down to legal in person. By 10:06, the company's lead counsel, James Withers, tie askew, eyes wide, was sprinting down the hall like someone had told him the fire drill was real this time. He was holding a printed contract in one hand and his phone in the other, barking into it like it owed him money. Didn't knock. He stormed into the CFO's office and slapped the papers on the desk so hard the coffee mug shook. This clause, he said, pointing to the page. You remember this clause? The CFO, who'd been halfway through bragging about Darren's leadership transition to another exec, blinked. What clause? Withers leaned over, finger stabbing the page like a dagger. Clause 4.2, continuity designation. It's signed, binding. And Karen is the only listed executive. She's gone, they can walk. The CFO opened his mouth, closed it, turned pale. Withers didn't wait. Did you fire her before reviewing this? She, the CFO, stammered. Did you remove her from the account before checking continuity? Withers pressed. Silence. Then, I thought it was symbolic. It wasn't symbolic, Withers growled. It was structural. It's a legal linchpin. You just kicked the foundation out from under our biggest recurring client. At 10:13, Darren tried to enter the chat, literally, by sending Monica a chipper follow-up. Hi, Monica. I'll be your new go-to from here on out. Let's chat soon. She didn't respond. At 10:41, Monica sent a new email, this time directly to legal, CCing their in-house counsel, their risk officer, and just for fun, the vice president of finance. Pending clarification on the continuity clause and authorized signatory are placing all renewal activity on hold. We'll resume discussion once our legal team completes review. Please refrain from further assignments until this is resolved. Translation: we're not saying we're pulling the account, but we're not saying it either. Darren read it 3 times, then again. Then turned to HR and asked, can she do that? HR, to their credit, gave the most honest answer anyone gave that day. I don't know. Meanwhile, 3 miles away, I was in the same diner booth. Same red vinyl. Same bottomless coffee. I'd already seen Monica's first email. She'd forwarded it to my personal inbox, no message, just a subject line that read, "You still watching?" Oh, I was watching, like a front row seat to a slow-motion demolition. At 11:12 a.m., I got another forward, this time from James Withers himself. Subject Clause 4.2 confirming signature inside. A scanned PDF of the continuity clause, circled in red with my name highlighted. No request, no plea, just proof. The document spoke louder than any meeting ever could. And me? I didn't reply, didn't call, didn't post. I just sat there sipping my coffee, watching the fire spread quietly through the building. Because sometimes silence isn't absence. It's authority. By noon, executive suite smelled like fear and bad cologne. You could feel it, something heavy had shifted. Like someone had cracked a support beam and the whole structure was swaying just enough for everyone to pretend they didn't notice. But they noticed. They always notice when money starts thinking about leaving. At 12:17 p.m., the CFO finally read the clause. Not just skimmed it, not just waved it at someone like a prop, read it. Every line, every bullet, every signature. The moment his eyes hit the phrase service continuity contingent upon named executive designation, his mouth opened slightly. He looked like he was trying to swallow a golf ball, because suddenly it wasn't just Karen who'd gone silent. It was the client. The same client who had, until 48 hours ago, been scheduled to sign a renewal worth $63.2 million over the next 3 years. And now they were reviewing the situation. Now they were escalating internally. Now they were asking for alternative options in the event of a noncompliance breach. The kind of phrases that don't scream, they just erase. By 12:39, Withers had briefed the CFO again, this time more slowly, like he was explaining to a toddler why you don't microwave aluminum. You removed Karen from the account, he said, gesturing at the contract like it was exhibit A in a criminal trial, which, under your own signature, broke the continuity designation. She resigned, the CFO replied weakly. No, you removed her before the resignation was acknowledged, Withers corrected. It was a forced removal, in public, during an all-hands meeting, with witnesses. It doesn't matter if she sent the resignation afterward. The clause was already violated. The CFO blinked. Twice. Maybe if he didn't move, the consequences couldn't see him. But they wouldn't walk, he muttered. Withers stared at him. They're allowed to. The clause gives them the right to withdraw without penalty. We can't legally hold them to renewal. The CFO leaned back, eyes glassy, denial flooding in like a busted levee. Get Monica on a call, he said. They're not taking calls. Email her. We already did. Send Darren. With all due respect, Withers paused, softening his voice to mask the loaded gun inside it. Darren's the reason this happened. He doesn't have signature authority. He's not listed on any version of the contract. And he hesitated, and what? The CFO snapped, and we can't find him. Turns out, Darren had conveniently taken a personal day. No one had seen him since that morning's email exchange went nuclear. His office was locked. His phone off, Slack, silent, ghosted the building like it owed him money. By 1:12 p.m., the board was notified. It wasn't a meeting. It was a fire alarm. They joined via emergency call, 6 gray heads and 2 polished up-and-comers, all watching the CFO sweat through his shirt while trying to spin this as a minor misunderstanding. He blamed Karen's emotional response. He blamed legal for not flagging the clause sooner. He even blamed the client for failing to be collaborative. One bit. One board member, a former litigation shark from Chicago, cut in. Let me get this straight, she said, ice in her voice. You removed the only contracted executive tied to our largest client account publicly without checking the service continuity clause. The CFO didn't answer. Couldn't. And now the client has legal grounds to walk. Silence. Then, yes, Withers confirmed. That's the reality. She leaned back. Then it's not a misunderstanding. It's negligence. Someone else, finance maybe, asked if Karen could be brought back in. Withers shook his head. She hasn't responded to internal outreach. No phone calls, no emails, but the resignation was submitted and her forwarding note included the clause. All signatures are intact. What do you mean signatures? I mean, he said, her paperwork is perfect. Watertight, time-stamped. She saw this coming. She planned for it. That's when the room shifted. Could feel it even through the conference line. Karen wasn't a disgruntled employee. She was a sniper, and she'd fired the shot days ago. Now they were just waiting to feel the bullet. Back in my booth, I got a text from Monica. Just a single line, they're spiraling. I didn't reply, didn't need to. My job was done, not with shouting, not with lawsuits, just a clause. And a clock. At 8:46 a.m. the next morning, client's email landed like a precision airstrike in every C-suite inbox. Subject line. Leadership call request urgent from Monica Lynn to Legal, CFO, QCC, Contracts, Risk, Internal Counsel. We are requesting a leadership call to discuss continuity, but with one explicit stipulation. We will not speak with anyone related to or reporting directly through the CFO's chain of command. If this cannot be accommodated, proceed with exploring external transition options. No frills, no fluff, just a digital guillotine with a paper trail. By 9:01 a.m., legal scrambled to interpret the phrasing. Technically, someone said, Darren reports through HR on dotted line org charts. No, Withers cut in. Technically, he's the CFO's son. They're asking for adult supervision. The CFO sat silent, pale. He looked like someone had just turned off the lights inside his head. Across the room, the COO closed her laptop mid-sentence and excused herself for a previous engagement, which everyone knew meant plausible deniability. By 9:13, legal replied to Monica, suggesting a few neutral members of the leadership team could lead the discussion. By 9:28, her reply came through. Appreciate the effort. We prefer to speak with someone who previously held direct account authority and has executed contract-level decisions with us. Until then, we are halting all new work orders. If Karen James becomes available, we are open to resuming conversations. If not, We will begin onboarding alternate vendors. It was the kind of message that doesn't ask, it waits. The CFO went full ghost mode. No calls, no Slack, just his office door closed and the blinds drawn, like he was hiding from a repo man. Darren, still MIA, no response, not even a LinkedIn update. Rumor had it he'd disabled comments on his last excited to announce new leadership role post. Meanwhile, the board started circling. Their emails got shorter. Their CC lists got longer. One even asked for a postmortem outline, and when you hear that phrase in corporate, you know the body's already cold. Me, I was still in that diner booth, corner seat, coffee half drunk, laptop closed. I wasn't gloating, that's not my style. But when Monica's text came in, your silence is louder than any pitch deck. I let myself smirk because she got it. This wasn't about vengeance. This was about equilibrium. They wanted me gone? Fine. But they built the system that required my presence. They weaponized protocol. Well, protocol bit back. And now, absence spoke louder than any HR memo ever could. No more maybe next quarter promos. No more polite nods in meetings while Darren fumbled through charts he didn't understand. No more being the uncredited ghost behind every saved deal. Just silence. Strategic, precise, and damning. At 10:07 a.m., legal emailed me directly. First time since this started. Subject: availability for discussion, time sensitive. I didn't open it right away. I paid for my coffee, tipped big, left the booth. Then, standing in the parking lot, I finally opened the message. It was long, too long. Apologies, clarifications, requests. At the very bottom, would you be open to a short call with our leadership team? We understand your decision, but hope you'll consider a temporary engagement to maintain compliance and client trust. They didn't say it, but they were asking me to come back, even just for a moment, even just to stop the bleeding. And I hadn't even raised my voice. I just read the clause, let it speak, and let the silence grow teeth. The CFO was in his office with the door cracked open, smirking like he'd just negotiated world peace over a scotch and a LinkedIn endorsement. Feet up on the desk, tie loosened like a guy who thought everything was under control because no one was currently screaming at him. He'd just finished telling someone on speakerphone, probably a board member desperate for any sign of adult supervision, that things were stabilizing, and Darren is stepping up in ways we always believed he could. In the hallway, staff passed quietly, their conversations clipped and strained, like people whispering near a hospice bed. Karen's desk, still empty. Clean, the badge gone, her nameplate missing. The little cactus she used to joke had more resilience than most of the executive team, vanished. On the center of her desk, plain sight, sat a folded piece of paper. Heavy stock, initialed in blue ink. Next to it, an uncapped pen. Like she'd stepped away for just a moment, like maybe she was still nearby. At 10:32 a.m., James Withers from legal came barreling down the hallway like a man who'd just seen the financial equivalent of a severed limb. His face was ash, shirt untucked. Papers in hand, no briefcase, no folders, just raw documentation clutched like evidence from a crime scene. He didn't knock, just slammed through the CFO's office door like it was on fire. "Sir, tell me you didn't." The CFO froze mid-smirk. "What?" Withers tossed the contract onto his desk. It landed like a judge's gavel. Clause 4.2, redacted copies highlighted, time-stamped emails, forwarded resignation. Signature trails, all of it. "You fired Karen James," Withers said, voice shaking. "Only contracted signatory tied to our largest client account." "She resigned." "No," Withers snapped. "You removed her publicly, during an all-hands, before the resignation was even received. She said, okay, that wasn't consent. That was setup. She gave you the rope, and you built the gallows." The CFO's face drained of color. He reached for the document like maybe, just maybe, it said something different now, like maybe reality was optional if he flipped the page fast enough. But there it was, her name, her title, her authorization, binding, and now gone. "No one else has continuity rights," Withers continued, voice lower now, dead serious. "The client just told us they're ready to walk. No penalties, no delay, they're legally free." The CFO sat back slowly. His hand dropped from the desk. His mouth opened, nothing came out. Silence. Outside, a phone rang. No one answered. In the distance, someone shut a file drawer like it was a coffin lid. He looked down again, past the contract, past the clause, to the item beneath it. Karen's resignation letter, typed, crisp, quietly devastating. It didn't rage. It didn't whimper. It simply existed, dated, time-stamped. Final. Next to it, that uncapped pen. She hadn't stormed out. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't made a scene, she just walked, left the door open behind her, and in doing so, let every ounce of arrogance, nepotism, and negligence collapse inward like a dying star. Karen didn't come back. She didn't need to. The contract had already said everything. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.